Hi, and welcome to our next LegacyCast here on the Michigan Sports Legacy Conservancy YouTube channel. I'm Jim Stark, the Executive Director of the MSLC, and we're here to talk spring training baseball, a great time of the year. And joining me once again for this spirited baseball discussion is a guy who knows everything there is to know about sports. Is that what you told me? Is that what you told me to say? You wrote it down.
How are you front selling me like that? I'm definitely going to trip over someone's name in the segment that you're about to watch. You blame him for that, not me.
Well, Rob, it's a great time of the year. The winter is hopefully the worst of its past. Yes. We can start to see that bright sunlight of springtime, and that means baseball.
Yes.
And the Tigers are warming up down in Lakeland, and it's always one of my favorite times of the year when that long winter ends and baseball begins.
Well, it's also the sign everybody's got the chance right now.
Everyone's undefeated.
Everybody's 0-0. All right. No matter what we think is going to happen with this year's team, we're going to be wrong in some aspect, one way or the other, because it happens every year. And it is a long season, and that's the best part. This is just the first, robin of spring starting to chirp out as the green grass is starting to come up and the snow is melting away.
Is this your Robert Frost era here?
That's it, yes.
Yeah, very, very nice. Were you ever a spring training aficionado? Did you ever go down to Florida when you were young?
Not when I was younger. I waited until I was in my 20s the first time that I went down to Lakeland and spent a few days there. And it became a trip that I did with my brothers just a couple of times. And it wasn't the next time until I was in my 30s that we went down there. But just the idea of enjoying sitting and watching all these players, many of whom, are never even going to make it to the big club level. But everything was so relaxed.
Yeah, there's no question that spring training is so much more relaxed in general than the regular season, especially earlier in camp. Later in camp, it gets, but those first several weeks when everybody, as you said, has a chance to make the team, the veterans are just kind of moving in. They're available for autographs.
Oh, yeah.
They're available to talk to them. They wander around as they head back to the locker room. But the fans can get up real close. But I'll tell you, when I was young, though, the idea of spring training in Lakeland, Florida was like some kind of a mecca. all I knew was where, I didn't even know where it was. I just knew it was Lakeland, Florida. Like that was, I remember Joe Falls would always write about the food joints in Lakeland, Florida. And, so it was always this place I aspired to go. I had no idea where it was.
Yeah. And
or how to get there.
It's just like this tiny little town in Florida.
Well, but it was Lakeland, Florida. So I remember the first time I had a chance to go down there. I was like you in my early 20s. And I wasn't down. I was like in the middle. I wanted to go to Lakeland. So I drove to Lakeland from, I think, Orlando.
Oh, you weren't even specifically down there for
but I
spring
wanted
training?
to see the spring training home of the Detroit Tigers. And you know what? It was great.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. We always see that sign that was always hanging over Joker Mark's Day. The spring training home of the
Well,
Detroit
here's a funny
Tigers.
thing. When I first went there, when I drove down that road, the stadium stood out. The next time I went, a couple of car dealerships had, and you couldn't see the stadium. I thought, well, wait, is it? So I remember that was the evolution because it's a cool place. It's a former Air Force base.
Yes.
And it's the longest single standing training site in all baseball now. The Tigers.
It's cool that their single A team that's down there in Lakeland is called the Flying Tigers. It was named after, the Air Force pilots that were before the U.S. was in World War II.
Right.
They kind of joined up and helped the British.
Well,
and they called themselves the Flying Tigers. We just thought, what a fantastic idea. It really ties those two things together.
Well, and to tie it, they used to have their batting cages in one of the Quonset huts.
Oh, wow.
In one of the old working sheds, and that's
like
since
air
changed.
hangers,
The hangers. So it was had a lot of character to the location. And then, of course, the game, and I remember they didn't broadcast very many games early on.
No.
And we had a spring training game on radio or TV. That was like everything. I get to see the Tigers again,
Yeah,
so it was great.
Biggest thing I remember, if you let me interrupt you, Jim, when I was down there, the last time I was down there was when Jim Leland was the manager. And the coolest thing about spring training, you were talking about how close the fans get to the players and that stuff, even during the game. The dugouts, there's no covers on them. They're like wide open on the sides. And Jim Leland and Gene Lamont were sitting in folding chairs, like right behind the batter's box. There was the mesh of, right behind home plate. And they're just sitting right there. I mean, you could have conversations with them and hear every word they are saying to the fellow players, to the opposing players.
You're so close.
It's just like kind of, you feel like you're in the inner circle because the seats themselves at Joker Martian, I mean, there's just hundreds of them, right? I mean, it's not like a 30,000.
Oh no, I think now it's 9,000, but at one time it was 3,000 and 4,000.
Yeah, and it just feels that intimate.
I remember one of the cool things is when I first started covering baseball for the media. It's gone now, but there was outside the locker room there was this little picnic area, and all the players would come through that picnic area, and you could sit there if you're a media guy.
Right.
So you'd sit, and there'd be so and so sitting here, and it was great. And I'll never forget one of my highlights was the time that Yogi Berra was sitting in a golf cart because the Yankees were there.
Oh, really?
And he starts talking to me because I was standing. And, so little things like that. And the manager's office in the clubhouse was a picture of Ty Cobb, and it just was so much character. And of course, you get used to the locker room. And again, this has changed too since the renovations. But the locker room at Comerica with this big palatial. Not so in spring training,
no.
especially early in camp when it was full.
Yeah, you think these millionaires have it good? Not during spring training.
They had one little cubicle, and that was it.
Yeah.
But I remember the one time I went down when Alan Trammell was the manager, and Sparky had been retired. Sparky Anderson's job was walking around getting the basketball squares sold.
Oh, my
He was in
gosh.
charge of the basketball pool and just stuff like that, But again, the idea, as you said earlier, of it always being full of hope. Everybody could be a success. No one. But I do remember the first time I saw Trammell and Whitaker.
Oh, really? Wow.
I remember they had just come up and they were these guys that no one knew much, but they had promise. And they were these skinny guys. The time that Tom Selleck was filming a movie down in Lakeland, and during spring training, and got the bat in an actual game as part of his. So it was great.
This is the thing, because I know there's a whole generation of kids that seem to be less enamored with baseball. I mean, we grew up just loving it.
Right.
America's game, and
America's
summer
pastime.
Yeah, and it's not summer until you heard Ernie Harwell on the radio. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what it was when we were younger. If you've got those kids and you're a huge baseball fan and they are so enamored with what's going on between their two thumbs, bring them to Lakeland. That's what you need to do. That will humanize these players that they're normally only seeing on television. They'll realize that they're real people, and they're just going to fall in love with the game.
Well, and don't want to forget there's those big fields out behind the stadium, the actual workout fields.
Yeah,
and
right.
you can walk through there and see 4 practices going on at one time and see all the baseball you'd ever want to see up close. And you feel, but I agree with you, Rob. There's nothing better than after a cold, brittle, bitter winter,
and we have certainly had one
sitting
of those.
in the sun in a minor league, or a minor league ball, but at Tigers ballpark, just baking in the sun. There's nothing better than that.
Yeah.
Watching a Tiger game being played.
Yeah, it really is. And again, it doesn't matter. The names are going to change. Some of these kids you may not see for years, if at all, in a Tiger uniform. It defeats. It doesn't matter. I mean, that's not what you are there for. You really are. Let them evaluate the players. You're there to just drink in and feel like you're 8 years old, listening to Ernie and watching baseball.
Yep.
That's what it's like.
And the players are people. They're not
Right.
They're not a speck or a figure on a screen. They're right there next to you. They'll answer your question. But one of my favorite spring training traditions, and they still do it, the pitchers go and run their laps in the outfield during the game. Right? That's spring training.
Yeah, you want to think old-timey baseball. You see all the old movies and that kind of stuff. It still exists.
Right.
When you were watching, Cactus League baseball out in Arizona or Grapefruit League baseball down in Florida. It still exists.
And it's funny.
Even these multi-millionaires act like little kids.
Here's the difference, though. I'll give you a difference. Back when we were young,
Yeah.
the Tigers all stayed in the same Holiday Inn. Willie Horton had his big, he had the double barrel cut in half, his big. They don't stay in the Holiday Inn anymore.
No, they're not staying in the Holiday Inn.
They stay in $1 million condos. They fly in if they so that's changed. But once they're on the field,
Yes.
it's still the same.
It's just the game.
Yeah, it's still the same.
game.
So if you have a chance to go down to Florida, if you can get away yet this year or if next year, plan it. We guarantee you there'll be nothing like getting a chance to watch spring training baseball. The Tigers are even once the games start, it's still spring training. So they lose 3 games. It's still spring
early.
training.
It's still
Until
early.
they come north, is always hope, right?
Always hope.
So Rob and I hope you enjoyed bringing you our little breath of summertime here in the middle of winter, but it's spring training time now. Watch your Tiger channels and radio station for the games coming to you from Lakeland. But for Rob Otto, I'm Jim Stark. Rob, of course, you're very busy on the social media in the sports world.
Yep, best way to follow me. I'm blogging for Detroit Sports Nation and other places, and to get my thoughts is to follow me on Twitter. It's Ottoman Thoughts. That's at Ottoman Thoughts on Twitter. You'll find me there.
Of course, Rob will be invited back to do another one of these Legacy Casts. He does a very good job despite my abuse. I'm Jim Stark, the Executive Director of the MSLC. You can view these Legacy Casts on our YouTube channel or visit our website, mslc.org. We'll see you next time for another Legacy Cast.